My name is Ryan Corrigan, and this is for the Shawnee Mission South Forensics Tournament. In the closing stages of 2020, Pixar released their latest film titled Soul. The film follows the struggling jazz musician Joe Gardner as he offers the gig of a lifetime with his role model, Dorothea Williams. Due to his excitement, Joe recklessly falls down an open manhole and is trapped in a coma. His soul is then transported to the existential conveyor belt that will soon deliver him to the great beyond. In the same way the fictional Joe Gardner fears death, us too in the real world battle with our not-so-fictional deaths. Living in Western society, many people know of the classic heaven afterlife, but by only paying attention to this outlook, we've closed off a whole ocean of beliefs in other parts of the world. So today, let's first start by sight reading a controversial philosophy on death. Then, let's warm up while you explore different ways humans cope with dying. And finally, let's improvise our way through our solo as we explore different views on death in the Eastern world. Existentialism is a philosophy that emphasizes the belief that individuals are the ones who control their own fate rather than an outside force. That this philosophy pushes for people to find meaning in life by embracing their existence rather than constantly denying the fact that death is inevitable. The term existentialism was first coined by French philosopher Gabriel Marcel in the 1940s, and since then has become one of the most highly debated philosophies of all time. Friedrich Nietzsche was one of the most notable and infamous existential philosophers, as he set the stage for existentialism to blossom following World War II. In his 1889 book titled Twilight of the Idols, Nietzsche introduced his philosophy of the afterlife, in which he described how every human life is a small speck in the grand scheme of human existence. Rather than life having meaning because it is your test before heaven, Nietzsche argued that the existence of death in the first place is the reason life has meaning. Without death, there'd be nothing to live for, as life would continue forever. Through this belief, Nietzsche urged people to say yes to life, rather than constantly denying the fact that death is inevitable and dreaming about what may or may not await you following your death. While Nietzsche focused on embracing death, he was definitely in the minority, as many stories have been created in order to cope with dying and delay the inevitable. So now that we have sight-read a controversial philosophy on death, let's warm up on different ways humans have coped with dying. English philosopher, University of Cambridge graduate Stephen Cave described in his 2012 book titled Immortality that human minds are powerful enough to conduct all the marvels we have in our world. But with this power, humans are cursed to know that at some point we're going to die. In order to cope with death, many stories have been created in order to delay the inevitable and cope with your death. One such story of this comes from China and the early search of immortality, dating back to ancient China and the Jing dynasty. The emperor of the Jing dynasty was desperate to become immortal and continue his control over his kingdom. From this desperation, he sent the alchemist Xu Fu eastward in search of immortality. Xu Fu promised the emperor he knew where to find immortality, but said he would need boats with plenty of supplies to complete this quest. Oh, and also 500 virgin girls. I can tell what Xu Fu's true intentions were, and needless to say, Xu Fu never returned to the emperor with the secrets of immortality. This story between the emperor and Xu Fu displays how eager humans can be to achieve immortality through any means necessary. The emperor was easily swindled by Xu Fu because death was the subject, when under other circumstances, he likely would not have been. Of course, China was not the only place in search of immortality, as to the west, alchemists in Europe were similarly trying to crack the code of death. The revival of alchemy in the 12th century culminated in the story of the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is said to have many capabilities, such as turning mercury into gold or silver, but more importantly, it is able to grant the user immortality. Creating a Philosopher's Stone was seen as the epitome of knowledge and glory in the alchemy world, and because of this, it was highly sought after. Overall, both these stories between the Emperor of China and the Philosopher's Stone display how hard these stories have been crafted in order to delay the inevitable. But in the end, the inevitable is inevitable and will still happen. While these stories of immortality are intriguing, they are simply that, stories and fables. But on a more serious note, the religious and cultural beliefs of many Eastern cultures are often disregarded, as they provide an eye-opening outlook on what death truly is. So now that we are warmed up, let's finish up this gig as we improvise our way through our solo on reincarnation. Jazz is one of the most unique genres in music in the United States. Each city has their own distinctive style, such as Kansas City with bebop, New Orleans with Dixieland, and New York City with Afro-Cuban. Even though all of these styles of jazz generally use the same instruments, the end products are very different. In the same way that jazz varies between regions in the United States, perspectives on death are the same throughout the world. One of these common beliefs is the idea of reincarnation, which comes is reincarnation, which is a part of many Eastern cultures and their beliefs. Reincarnation, at its core, believes that the body and soul are separate entities. While the body does still die like anybody else, the soul that was in that body remains immortal and continues this cycle of death and rebirth until it can one day achieve the salvation of Brahma Loka. One of the major groups that believe in reincarnation is Hinduism. Hinduism currently has a whopping 1.7 billion followers worldwide, making it 15% of the world population. Countries like Nepal and India continue to support the highest level of Hindus, and continue to cherish these classic Hindu beliefs, which aim for the four goals of Hinduism, which are Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. Artha is the pursuit of security. Kama is the pursuit of pleasure. Dharma is the pursuit of a moral life. And finally, Moksha is the pursuit of salvation. This pursuit of salvation is the reason why Hindus reincarnate, as they're constantly trying to get to that point of reincarnation to inevitably get to that salvation of Brahma Loka. While this process of reincarnation may seem like it could go on forever, it is dictated by the process of karma. Think of karma like a balancing a scale. Do a positive deed and it helps your karma. Do a negative deed and it hurts your karma. Overall, the more positive deeds you do, the more likely you are to reincarnate into a desirable situation, and ultimately the closer you are to death. Or not death, and ultimately the closer you are to Brahma Loka, and the eternal salvation that comes with this. While all this talk about the East and West is very confusing, an easier way to look at it is to get a book. When the West sees this book of life, they see death as the end and the final cover, and your life on earth is forever over. But when the East sees this book, they merely see death as the end of a chapter. And through this process of reincarnation, they're able to add multiple chapters to their life and basically bring this whole collection together and to make the book of their life, which is much more meaningful and has many more stories within it, rather than the Western view of death. So today, we were able to first analyze the controversial philosophy on death. Then, we were able to warm up and see different ways that humans have coped with dying in the past. But more importantly, we were able to broaden our horizons as we explored the different views on death in the Eastern world, such as reincarnation with Hinduism. Well, yes, my speech is essentially all about death. The bigger picture, in fact, is the opposite: life. In the closing stages of Soul, Joe Gardner is having a conversation with jazz artist Dorothea Williams, in which she tells Joe, "I heard the story about a fish. He swims up to the older fish and says, 'I'm looking for this thing they call the ocean.' The ocean," the older fish says, "that's what you're in right now." This is what the younger fish replies with, this is water. What I want is the ocean." This seemingly insignificant story between these two fish displays the important lesson that we need to value the little things in life. We are so determined to reach these cosmic heights that we can barely value what we have on Earth, and we can barely see what is right in front of our own eyes. Instead of having these abstract aspirations we can never reach, we need spending more time, which we can control in our life, instead of dreaming about what may or may not await us while we're on Earth. So by broadening our horizons, we may one day be able to truly love our ocean. Thank you.